All right, ready to dive deep into the digital world.
Let's do it.
Today, we're going to unpack how things really work online, using some AWS training materials as our guide.
Should be fascinating.
By the end, you'll understand the tech that shapes, like, everything.
And who knows, maybe you'll even be inspired to build something amazing yourself.
Exactly. Okay, so our source material kicks off by reminding us how deeply we rely on technology now.
Yeah.
I mean, just think about your day. Education, shopping, managing money, even watching your favorite shows. It's all digital now.
It really is. And what's so revolutionary is that technology just isn't limited by physical boundaries anymore.
True.
Like, we can connect with anyone, anywhere instantly,
Yeah.
access information at our fingertips, even control devices in our homes from miles away. It's changed how we live, work, think even.
Okay, so we're living in this digital world, but what are the tools that make it all work? The source dives into the concept of applications, apps. They're basically sets of instructions written in code, like a recipe for computers.
Right. And there are so many different types.
Yeah, like what are the main categories we see?
Well, you've got web apps. Those are accessed through a browser. Like, think Amazon for shopping. Or your online banking portal.
Makes sense.
Then there are mobile apps. Those have completely revolutionized our smartphones.
Absolutely.
Ordering food, booking a ride, managing finances, all from your phone. It's amazing. And of course, we can't forget the workhorses, the desktop apps.
Right, the classics.
Like for writing documents or creating presentations. And then there's that whole world of Internet of Things.
Oh, yeah.
Apps for your smartwatch that tracks fitness. Or a thermostat you control remotely.
It's amazing how much we can do with apps.
Yeah.
But I have to admit, I always get a little intimidated by the word code.
Yeah.
It sounds so, I don't know, technical.
Right.
Can you break it down for us non-techie folks?
Sure. So code is basically a language. It's how we communicate with computers. Tell them what to do step by step. And just like human languages, you've got different types of CAD or programming languages like Java, Python, C++, each with its own strengths used for different purposes.
So if I wanted to learn to code, I'd have to pick a specific language to start with.
Exactly. It's like choosing to learn Spanish or French. Once you learn the basics of one, it makes learning others easier.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so we've talked about the software side, apps, and code. But what about the hardware? What is a computer, really?
At its core, it's a machine that processes information.
Okay.
It takes data in, processes it based on a set of instructions, then spits out the output, kind of like a chef in a kitchen.
Oh, I like that analogy.
The ingredients are the data, the recipe's the code, and the delicious meal is the output.
Okay, so what are the actual, physical pieces of a computer?
Well, you've got the motherboard, which is like the central nervous system connecting everything. Then there's the CPU, the brain that executes instructions. That's our chef, actually following the recipe.
Right.
Then you have memory, or RAM. Think of it like the chef's countertop, providing a workspace.
Temporary workspace.
Exactly. Just like a countertop gets cleared off, RAM gets cleared when you turn off the computer.
So where do we store things permanently?
That's where storage drives come in. Hard drives, solid-state drives. Those are the refrigerators, the pantry, where the chef keeps ingredients, finished dishes. And just like a fridge, storage drives keep that data, even when the power's off.
Makes sense.
Oh, then of course you can't forget the network card. That's our delivery service, connecting the kitchen to the outside world.
To get new ingredients, deliver the final product.
Exactly. And all these components have gotten smaller, faster, more powerful over time, but the basic principles of how they work together, they haven't really changed.
Okay, that was a great breakdown of the hardware. But now let's talk cloud. I feel like that word gets thrown around all the time. What does it actually mean?
You're right. It's everywhere. But at its core, the cloud is simply a way to access computing resources over the internet. So servers, storage, software, all online. Instead of owning and maintaining your own hardware, you rent these resources from a cloud provider like AWS, like renting an apartment instead of owning a house.
So instead of having all these servers taking up space in my office, I can just rent space on someone else's server.
Exactly. And that brings us to the idea of cloud computing. Traditionally, if a business needed computing power, they'd have to invest in their own data centers. Basically, giant warehouses full of servers and equipment.
Wow.
Huge upfront investment, plus the cost of maintenance, electricity, cooling.
Sounds like owning a house. Big financial commitment, lots of responsibility.
You got it. But with cloud computing, it's more like renting an apartment.
Yeah.
You pay for what you need, and the landlord, the cloud provider, takes care of the infrastructure.
That sounds much more manageable, especially for smaller companies that might not have the resources to build their own data centers.
Exactly. Cloud computing has really leveled the playing field, giving businesses of all sizes access to technology that used to be only for huge corporations. And it's amazing how that shift to the cloud has driven so much innovation. Like, it's led to these things called virtual machines, which are key to making cloud computing so flexible.
Okay, virtual machines. I've heard the term, but not really sure I get it. Is it like a computer inside a computer?
That's a pretty good way to think about it. A virtual machine, or VM, it's basically a software version of a physical computer. So imagine you have a big house, and you divide it up into separate apartments, each with its own tenant, their own rules, their own way of doing things. VMs are like those apartments, sharing the same building, the physical hardware, but operating totally independently.
So instead of needing a separate physical computer for each task, you can run multiple virtual computers on just one machine.
You got it. It's like having multiple chefs working in the same kitchen, each with their own space, but sharing the oven and stuff. Saves space, energy, and you get the most out of your hardware.
Super efficient, but how does this connect back to the cloud?
Well, VMs are the foundation for a lot of cloud services. When you rent a server in the cloud, you're actually renting a VM. This lets the cloud provider easily allocate resources, scale things up or down as needed, even move your VM to a different physical server without you even noticing.
So it's like a magic kitchen that expands or shrinks depending on how many chefs are there and what they're making.
Exactly. So we've talked about cloud computing generally, but our source focuses on AWS, which is a major player in this space. What sets AWS apart?
Right.
Well, AWS, that's Amazon Web Services, it's like a huge online department store for cloud computing. They've got this massive range of services, everything from basic stuff like computing power and storage to really specialized tools for things like databases, AI, even controlling satellites.
Wow, that's a lot. Can you give me some specific examples of services they offer?
Sure. One of the most popular is Amazon EC2, which stands for Elastic Compute Cloud. Basically, it's like renting a virtual server in the cloud. You can choose the operating system, how much memory, storage, even the type of processor you need. Then there's Amazon S3, simple storage service. Think of it as a giant digital attic. You can store anything. Photos, videos, documents, backups, even entire websites. And you only pay for the storage you use.
So with so many services, it must be hard to know where to start. How does AWS help customers navigate all that?
They categorize their services based on how much control you want over the underlying infrastructure.
Okay.
3 main models: infrastructure as a service, ISOTform as a service, PaaS, and software as a service.
Okay, break those down for me. What's the difference?
Imagine this. IaaS is like renting an empty kitchen. You've got the appliances, but you got to bring your own ingredients, cook, clean up. PaaS is like renting a kitchen that's already stocked with some basics. You still cook, but it's easier. And then SaaS is like ordering takeout. You don't even enter the kitchen. The meal just arrives ready to go.
Okay, so IaaS, most control, most responsibility. SaaS, the opposite. And PaaS is somewhere in between.
Exactly. And AWS offers services across all 3. Plus, they're always working to make things more affordable. Did you know they've lowered their prices over 75 times since 2006?
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Shows they're serious about making cloud computing accessible. But I have a question about security. If I'm storing my data on someone else's servers, how do I know it's safe?
Great question. And it's something AWS takes very seriously. They have this concept called the shared responsibility model. Basically, security in the cloud is a partnership.
So it's not just AWS's job to keep my data safe.
Right. AWS is responsible for securing the infrastructure, the physical data centers, servers, all that. They have top-notch security to protect against physical threats, cyber attacks, data breaches. But you, the customer, are responsible for securing your applications and data within that environment.
So like living in a secure building. The landlord keeps the building safe, but I still got to lock my own door.
Precisely. And AWS provides a bunch of tools to help.
Right.
There's IAM, identity and access management. That lets you control who has access to your AWS resources, like a digital bouncer. And there's Amazon Guard Duty, which uses machine learning to detect any shady activity, like a 24/7 security guard.
Those sound essential. But with all these tools, it must be tough to stay on top of everything.
Security is an ongoing thing. AWS is always adding new features, so staying informed is important. They have tons of resources to help customers learn best practices.
Okay, so we've got the shared responsibility, some security services.
Yeah.
But what about cost? It seems like it'd be easy to spend a lot in the cloud if you're not careful.
You're right. It's important to be cost conscious. Thankfully, AWS has tools to help manage that too. A basic but essential one is the AWS Cost and Usage Report. It breaks down your spending by service, resource, even linked accounts.
Like an itemized receipt for your cloud usage.
Exactly. And to go even further, there's AWS budgets. You set custom budgets and get alerts if you're about to exceed them, like a spending limit on your credit card.
That would be helpful. I tend to overspend a little. But let's go back to the data centers, those massive facilities housing all the servers and stuff. What's going on inside those places?
We've mentioned them, but yeah, let's take a closer look. A data center is like this giant warehouse, rows and rows of servers, storage, networking equipment, all the infrastructure for power, cooling, the whole works. And they have to be incredibly secure, reliable, with backup systems in case of like a power outage or a natural disaster.
It's kind of wild to think about the scale of it all.
It is. AWS has them strategically located around the world. Each one has multiple availability zones. Those are basically separate data centers within a region designed to be isolated from each other. So if one has a problem, the others can keep running.
Redundancy, making sure there's no single point of failure. Makes sense. But how does data travel between all these different regions and zones?
That's where points of presence, or POPs, come in. AWS has this global network of POPs. They're edge locations that store content closer to users, like distribution centers for your digital stuff, ensuring fast delivery no matter where your users are.
So if I'm watching a video on a streaming service that uses AWS, the video might come from a POP that's closer to me, so it loads faster.
Exactly. It's all about making the user experience smooth. And remember, this is just a peek into the world of cloud computing. AWS is always innovating, expanding, pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
Amazing how far technology has come in such a short time. From those giant computers that filled entire rooms to the smartphones we have now, it's incredible.
And just imagine what's coming next. With AI, machine learning, all these cutting-edge technologies, the possibilities are endless. Who knows what incredible innovations are just around the corner?
Yeah, like a detailed statement for your cloud activities, really helpful for spotting where you might be overspending.
For sure.
And then there's AWS budgets. You can set custom budgets and get alerts if you're going over.
No, like a spending limit. Exactly. Helps you stay on track. Speaking of which, remember those data centers we talked about? Those giant facilities that house all the servers?
Yeah, the ones that power the whole cloud.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what's it like inside one of those places?
Well, picture a massive warehouse. Rows and rows of servers, storage systems, networking gear, all the stuff for power, cooling, you name it.
Oh.
And they have to be incredibly secure, reliable with backup systems in case something happens, like a power outage or a natural disaster.
It's mind-blowing to think about the scale of it all.
It really is. And AWS has these data centers strategically located all around the world.
Okay.
And each one has multiple availability zones.
Availability zone.
Yeah, basically separate data centers within a region. They're designed to be isolated from each other, so if one zone has a problem, the others can keep running.
So it's all about redundancy.
Exactly. No single point of failure. But how does data travel between all these regions and zones?
Good question.
That's where points of presence, or POPs, come in. AWS has a global network of them. They're edge locations, kind of like distribution centers for your digital content, making sure it's delivered quickly no matter where your users are.
So like if I'm watching a video on a streaming service that uses AWS, the video might actually be coming from a POP key that's closer to me.
Exactly. It's about optimizing that user experience. And remember, this is just a glimpse into the world of cloud computing. AWS is always innovating, expanding its services. It's amazing what's possible.
It really is. Technology has come a long way. I mean, think about it. We went from those huge computers that filled entire rooms to the smartphones we have now. It's incredible.
And it's exciting to think what's next, with AI, machine learning. Who knows what amazing innovations are just around the corner.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. We've explored the digital world from top to bottom. The hardware, the software, the cloud, all of AWS's amazing services. We even touched on security, managing costs, the global infrastructure.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. But hopefully you've gained a new appreciation for just how complex and how powerful the digital world really is.
Absolutely.
It's been an amazing journey. Thanks for joining us. And until next time, keep exploring, stay curious about this ever-evolving digital world.